Thanks, Christoph, for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me. So this is about kickstarting Node projects with Yeoman. And I'm kind of sure that lots of you have already heard of Yeoman, probably even used it, but I guess that's mostly front-end related, and even for the people that have already used it, I think I've also got something for you, but also for the starters, I guess this can be really nice to get you up and running really fast. So let's start with an XKCD. Just give you 20 seconds for those that don't already know it. Alright, so the gist is, was it too fast? Now I've crashed my started again. But going back is a problem. You can look up the slides, they're online. Anyway, the gist is that it can be hard to get started. And one reason for that is naming things. And I'm talking here about starting projects from scratch or doing whatever. I mean, for instance, if you just read about Node and you've read your first book on it, now you want to do actually a project in production. That's, I guess, a big step, and maybe you have to look up for how to structure your application, how to name things, how it is usually done in practice, what are the best practices anyway. So those are some reasons I've identified that can make it hard to get started. And here on the left you have these pictures. There's basically no consensus on anything. People name things differently and so on. And I guess in terms of maintainability that can be a problem. And also, I guess nobody wants to read tons of documentation to just get started, especially if you're doing some quick project. So there's help for that, and one big tool for that is Yeoman. And Yeoman has been around, I guess, for 2 years. It now has about 6,000 stars on GitHub, and here you can see the weekly downloads. And by now, people download the main module of Yeoman, I guess, 20,000 times a week. And as it's written here, as they say, it helps you kickstart new projects, prescribing best practices and tools to help you stay productive. So what this means, I'll go over that, and at the end we'll have some short discussion on pros and cons of that. So it's not only good, it has some downside, and I'll address that. So what is Yeoman anyway? It's, for one part, it's a workflow. It starts with scaffolding an application. That means basically generating a basic project structure, folder structure, and some files to get you going. Then it's about package management, and in the Node world there's NPM, which is really great. And for front-end related topics, just as, I don't know, downloading the latest Bootstrap or jQuery to your project, there is Bower, which is this bird thing. And there are a couple of others in that, but those two are the main things. And after that you have a build system, such as Grunt or Gulp, which are currently the most popular options, just for gluing everything together. Especially if you have, for instance, a CSS preprocessor like less, you have a compile step, and your build system will take part of that. Or also run your tests and these things. And furthermore, it's an ecosystem of generators. So it has this idea of the workflow, it has the scaffolding tool, and they provide a large list, a growing list of generators for different project types. And by now they have about 1,200 generators. And here you see some of them. I guess you can't read that from a distance. The top one is an Angular.js generator with 2,800 stars on GitHub, and there are a couple of others. And we'll just have a quick look at the web app generator. This is a front-end based one, and I'll go very quickly over it, just that you get the mere basics, and then I'll delve into more Node-related ones. So it basically looks like this. You install this Yo command line tool, which is the scaffolding system. Then you get the generator. In our case, it's generator web app, and when you run that in the terminal, you see this shell, and it asks you a couple of questions on how you want to structure your project. And for instance, this generator starts with HTML5 boilerplate, which is basically an HTML5 big file that already contains lots of stuff you usually need when you're doing a project in that directory. and you have jQuery and a build file, and here you can add additional stuff. For instance, Bootstrap, which is selected here. And basically, after selecting all these options, it generates the basic project structure for you. It automatically runs all this npm and power stuff. And when you then just write grunt serve, which runs the build script basically, you can instantly check it out in your browser, and this is basically what you get. So this is just a base project to help you get started, so you don't have to set up all that yourself. And it includes features like minification, already testing is set up, and it also includes linting, so JS lint usually, that checks your code for kind of common standards. And yeah, how does this translate to the workflow I've just prescribed? So it starts here with creating this folder structure, creating all sorts of files. You see here a gitignore file, bower.json, which is this thing for the package manager, a robots.txt, all these things. Then it downloads all the dependencies, and when you then run the grunt command as prescribed, it runs all these steps. It runs the tests, it runs the minification, it runs Artify, and it does all that for you, so you can just focus on the problem. But, and here we come to why this is a Node meetup after all, this isn't limited to front-end applications. It started off as basically targeted to front-end developers, but by now, even here in the top list, there's 3 of them, you could say, are back-end or full-stack related. And here these are Angular, full stack, JHipster, and WordPress. I'll go over some of them later, but that's just the message here. Yeah, is stuff that goes beyond front end. Just, I don't know, maybe if you're coming from another language, some related concepts. First off, that's a Node thing. The Express generator is something that I used when I started. It basically scaffolds out a basic Express.js application. You can provide some parameters. Like in this case here, it's a -h, which then sends your template engine to Bürgin, and other options like that, but it's not exactly user-friendly. You have to check out the how to set up these commands, but it works. What I also like a lot is from Maven, the archetype system. That's a Java thing, and it's basically for generating whole projects, setting up build scripts, and all this. Basically also scaffolding. There's on the bottom left, you have this screenshot from Eclipse, which is about generating getters and setters and all this thing. This is not about generating a full project, but small parts of it. This is a concept that we'll see later on again. And I guess in the Rails world, or Sails, which is basically Rails for Node.js, there is new scaffolds the basic project, and then there's also generate. For given that you have already a project, it generates parts of it, so new modules, so that you don't have to write all the boilerplate code yourself. And for the Node world, I've done some data analysis on npm downloads API, and the most popular ones currently are the Express generator. I mean, for the backend related ones, generator Express, generator Kraken, and generator Node. And on the right, you see the Express generator. This is basically, let's say, a derivation of this Express generator with the command line options. It's basically the same thing, a bit extended. And here you then have this menu. Rather than specifying command line parameters, it asks you which version do you want, which view engine do you want a CSS preprocessor or not. These things. And the Kraken one, it's a different story. It's an open source project from PayPal, and it extends Express.js with security features and internationalization features, and so on and so forth. And now I think this is a good moment to just jump in and actually try that, and we'll have a look at the generator Express and the generator Node. So now comes the fun part. I hope you can read all that. So guess that's good enough. So let's say we have this meetup. Let's go there. All right, and now I guess we could start with the generator node, which is for building node modules, and it sets up the basic structure for that. So let's create a folder, job titles, and here we can just run this generator by saying yo node. And there we have this prompt again. And it asks us for a module name, job names is fine, job titles is fine. Description, that sounds good as well. Homepage, well, license MIT, GitHub username, author's name. Yeah, all these options you would like to enter actually if you were to upload a module. We won't do that. We don't need CLI tools, and we don't need browserify. But then it creates the basic project structure, and it's if you can scroll up here, it's from npm. It gets all sorts of modules for you, and after that, when you just check it out, this is what the structure looks like. So let's edit that and make something semi-meaningful out of that. So here again, if you can read that. You see some parts of the structure here. For instance, the README file, which has a common markup structure, like most tools do, with also a Travis CI integration. There's also a Travis file for building it. All this stuff, and I guess the interesting part is here in the lib folder. This is our starting point. This is our module, and it has this one function awesome, which returns awesome. And there is a corresponding test that says it must be awesome, and checks that. And what I found somewhat funny is, let's go in the browser here. There's a growing number of pages like this where you can generate fancy job titles, like you're a senior producer or a junior mobile content architect and so on. And I just for sake of demonstration, I thought let's create a node module that generates fancy job titles. And I couldn't think of anything better. I'm sorry for that. So let's adapt the test accordingly. So we'll have a generate method that does exactly that, and it shall return a fancy job title. All right, and what can we do with that? So let's say that's job titles.generate, and then we assert whether that title, or let's say whether it's a string. That's enough. That's our test. And now let's implement that. So we just change that part here. And all right, so let's have level is... Yeah. Sure. I mean, don't want to spend too much time on this this basic example, but let's just say we have junior, senior, brutal, and we have Node.js, say Angular.js, and something third, MongoDB. And an activity. That's hacker, guru, ninja. All right. What did you say? Come on. I have to do this quick so that we can get to the fun stuff. Right. And right. Quite a lot of stuff to write for such a basic thing. There we go. And tag J and activity K. Alright, I guess that should work. And now we can run the grunt command, and it runs JS_hint, which is this linting thing. Let me just change the code so that it fails. For instance, not using semicolons, he wouldn't like that. And here you can see missing semicolon. And that's basically what this is doing. And let's just add it again. Run grunt. And you have our beautiful test is obviously passing, and all of that is working. So let's just pack this. Rather than uploading it actually to NPM, this just packs it, and then we can install it later. So let's go into the Express generator and fuse this stuff together. Alright. Now we can run, let's reset that, Yo Express. I've already downloaded all these generators, but it's kind of straightforward. We want a very basic application. I'd prefer Jade, no preprocessor, and grunt is fine. And same game here. It creates all these files for you, and it runs the package managers. And then we can just say grunt, and it started this application, which we can check out here on localhost 3000, and that's basically what we get. This is the basic application for now. And let's stop that. And now let's just integrate our awesome job title generator module. So it's npm install, and then we have to jump back to this job titles thing and do that. So basically the same process as downloading a regular module. Then we can just edit the code to do that. And here you can see again this project structure that we've just gotten. Looks a bit different now. One thing, for instance, that we get is this grunt file, which is the build script. And there's, for instance, this task of running a server. But given that we haven't selected any preprocessor whatsoever, this is very basic. But if you were to select any of these, it would be more complex, and it would all do that for you, because, I mean, setting that up yourself can be annoying. Alright, let's edit the index page so that it shows a list of these fancy job titles. And there we have the view here, index.jade, and we have the corresponding route, index.js. I guess I have to do that a tiny bit smaller. Still readable. So let's import our module, which was job titles. Require job titles. And we can just say our titles is an array. And we have titles push generate, which should yield a fancy job title. So let's just do that a couple of times and edit this. So our title is jobs, and we now have jobs, which is this titles array. Alright, now we have to edit the layout. Just say all where? Oh yeah, this would totally break. Each job in jobs, and it should just create a list item for that. And that should be it, if I haven't forgotten anything else. So where is my... There it is. And let's start the server again. Go to our browser, and there we have some titles. A brutal Node.js guru and a senior. Well, I mean, I see that this is kind of far from practice, but where is my presentation? Does this broke? Oh, it's a black slide. Well, that was very basic, but I guess it gave you a good idea on what Yeoman can do for you. And basically generates all these things, and you can just edit it and make it fit your purpose without caring about build scripts, caring about these things, or maybe just doing minor edits rather than building it up from scratch. And what generates quite a lot of buzz right now is this idea of the mean stack, which is combining MongoDB, Express.js, Angular, JS, and Node.js for a stack. And I've just illustrated the basic idea here. So you have this MongoDB in the backend, then you have an Express server, which uses Mongoose it's basically the same thing as object relational mapping, just translated to the concept of documents. So you define a schema for some object type and it maps it to MongoDB for you. And then you have an AngularJS application which serves the front end, which runs on the client side. And they communicate by means of a REST API or maybe by means of Socket.io. And obviously that's a fairly more complex setup than what we had before. And I guess in practice you would also want things like testing already set up for you. You want things like authentication in a real-world application. And you maybe want preprocessors too, let's say for CSS, or maybe if you want to write the entire thing in CoffeeScript, those generators can do that for you, so set it up, but you don't have to do it yourself. And there is a growing number of generators in that exact area for building such mean applications. And one thing that has been around for a long time is Angular full stack, and it's still leading, but there's also this mean.js generator, which, I don't know, is getting more and more users, and I guess we'll have a look at that one. But the Angular full stack one is great too. So that's just how it looks, and I guess those are the main scaffolding things for mean applications. There's also another project, mean.io, which does the same thing, but doesn't use this Yeoman architecture, but still. So let's just jump right in. So same idea as before, so let's stop that server, make a new directory for this mean application, and run the mean.js generator. And now again, we have lots of questions to answer. How would you like to call your application? That's the MNUG example, and that's a good description of it. Yeah, company author name, I'm Patrick. And we don't want the article example. Then you can select all sorts of AngularJS modules, which they say are kind of common for such applications. But we don't want any of them, just for now. We want to keep it kind of simple, but you could select them and they try to make it as easy as possible for you to get started. And then you know the deal. It just creates files again, but this will take bit more time than the generators before because it actually does a lot of stuff now. So let's just wait for that. And again, we had this Yo step where it just scaffolds the application. Now we come to the dependencies, so it runs npm right now and gets all sorts of npm dependencies. At some point it will also get Bower dependencies, which is right now. And finally, we're good to go. So I guess for this, we need a MongoDB to run it, just to check it out, how it works. So let's just create a directory for that and fire up an instance of MongoDB. That's it. Nothing fancy there. I'll just keep it in the background, but it needs this database to run on. And then we can just, as always, use grunt here. Just start grunt, and there we go. And again, this here it used JS hint. Check that 44 files are lint free, and there we go. And if we now go to the browser and go on localhost again, this is basically what we get. And yeah, just some basic page here, congratulations. But I guess an interesting point here is up there, which indicates that it already has gotten some authentication things up and running. So let's sign up here. Now we could sign up using social accounts. For that we would have to add API keys to the code, and we would have to publish this server to the internet so that we can get the callbacks from these systems, which you don't have. So let's just do that right here. Great stuff. It actually checks the email format, so we have to be careful here. Our username is Yo, and our password is, let's just say this is our password. There we are. Now we have this menu here where we can edit our profile, change our password. And basically what they say is that this is something you need in basically every application, just as doing these things with login with Facebook and so on. So they provide that for you in this basic template. And you can just look at it in the editor for a second. So this is the structure here, and obviously it's fairly more complex than the previous ones. And maybe you remember that picture I've shown of the stack. It basically translates to these two folders. These are the main things. So you have the public folder here, which is basically all the client stuff. There's the AngularJS application in there, and all these index views. I guess it's the wrong one. Core views. Here's that homepage that we've seen, congrats, you've configured, and so on. But here are all these node modules, and that's the client side. And in that app folder up there, we have basically the Express server, which has also a couple of views, but that's not the main point here. The main point, for instance, is here the REST API part for the users, or the user model. I've been talking about this object document mapping. Here you have this user schema, which has a first name, last name, display name, so on and so forth. That's basically what it generated. And there's also a config folder where you can set up all sorts of things. Let me just check which one is the relevant here. I'm not exactly sure, but essentially if you were to add, for instance, these API keys to make the login with Facebook work, you would have to do that in that config folder. So I guess it's kind of straightforward. It's also well documented, but that's the basic idea. It generates this basic project for you. There's also, for instance, a Docker file and also testing involved and JSON, as said before. So the cool thing about this generator in particular is that it has sub-generators. So I've been talking about this Rails example of the generate feature there, or maybe that's childish Eclipse example of generating getters and setters. The point here is they provide a number of sub-generators so that you can extend your mean.js application by other modules, which let's just do that for jobs, because we've had this job titles example. So we just say mean.js and then have a colon, and then you can add these sub-generators. And there's a list of all these on their page. And you can just say, I guess it's CRUD module, and let's say that's the job. And what this is doing, well, we don't need any supplemental folder for now. And yes, we would like module links to the menu, and we want to add it to the default menu. We only have one menu. I mean, this is really for actual production applications, so more complex ones. But the point here, what it did now for us, is we've just said that we want to add the concept of a job to our application. And it went on and it created a controller for that, a model for that, routes for that, basic tests, and all sorts of front-end models for that too. And if we now start our application again using Grunt, we can go back to the browser. We're And there, now we have this new tab of jobs, where we can list jobs. Obviously there is none yet, so we can just create one, just a brutal Node.js guru, I guess was one example from our awesome generator. Then it creates this page already here posted from this guy, and can go to the list view. And as said, it generated all these API methods for us. If we go back to, I guess I can just go to the editor here. And yeah, now we have, for instance, for these jobs, we have here these routes to get them, post them, delete them. And we now have a model for that too, which is a very basic one, just has a name and created date. But this, I think, can be a great place to really extend it, good starting point. And yeah, that's just another generator example. So let's go back to the presentation here. Obviously, this Yeoman thing isn't limited to Nodes or purely to JavaScript applications. There is a growing number of, let's say, other backend generators that do other things, or maybe things that aren't even related to front or backend at all, that just are used for generating config files. And here, for the trends, the most popular non-JavaScript things that I could find were JHipster and Skinny. And JHipster basically is Spring Boot combined with AngularJS, so this is Java stuff. And this Skinny thing is apparently a Scala framework that resembles some Ruby on Rails features. I don't know, they say it's Scala on Rails. And there are a couple of other ones, like one for WordPress and one for PHP here. I have no idea whether these are good or not, but the message here is there's other stuff too. And even if you say, well, all these generators, that's not for me. I have very special requirements, and there is no generator that possibly helps me, and I don't like that. What I think can be a great thing too is using Yeoman to help others get started. So let's say you've developed a framework and you want to help people use it, make it as easy as possible for them to use it. Or within your company, you have this template that you use over and over again with slight variations. Why not create a generator? This is kind of easy to do. And the folks from Mean.js, the generator which I've just shown, they say that as they looked for a way to help the community build and deploy production-level Mean applications, they decided to go with Yeoman because they say it provides a powerful, easy to maintain, open solution for scaffolding applications. And also this guy is from Bürgin.js, PayPal open source project as mentioned. They, on their getting started page, they say the recommended way to do this is using the Yo generator because it's just that easy. And what I think is kind of cool too is here's also some other examples. For instance, a generator for server config files. So for common web servers, you say your preferences. You'll probably get a number of questions again. Do you want this? Do you want that? And it generates the config file for you, so that you don't have to read all this documentation. You just say yes, no, yes, no. Or here, the generator Heroku. I guess it's not exactly generating a config file only. I guess it's creating a web server too. But in principle, you could also use that, assuming you have a hosting service, to help people get started with that. And, well, building generators is very well documented on their page, so I'm not going to cover that one. But obviously, there's a generator for that. So it's actually called generator, and it helps you building your own generator. So I guess maybe to start a discussion, I guess really the great parts about this Yeoman infrastructure, for one, is agility. Maybe you think for our production system we don't want to use such a generator. We want to know exactly what we're doing. That's okay. But I mean, at a hackathon, for instance, you don't want to care about naming folders and so on. There's no time for that. So just using a very basic scaffold and extending it can be great. So rapid prototyping, things like that. You can also use it for inspiration. I mean, just throw parts out of the application or just be inspired by the folder structure that they used and do it differently. And yeah, it allows you to focus on the issue at hand. For instance, with this mean.js generator, you don't have to worry about basically anything unless you have special requirements. And well, you can just throw in, generate modules for your customer, and be done with it. And yeah, helping others, creating a generator for your product that people can start to use it. Or you say, well, I hate all the generators available, build a better one. Why not? So some cons might be bloat. Say, well, I don't need half of this, what this generator did for me. Well, that can be bad. I mean, you can throw it out, you can change or adapt the generator, but it might be bad for you. Some of these generators are outdated. I mean, for Express.js, we now have Express 4, and I guess when they came from 3 to 4, they changed some parts of the included modules, they are named differently and so on. So some of these generators have flaws when you try to install them. They would need an update, which they don't get. So it might not fit your needs, as said, very special requirements, not for you maybe. And you could have that problem of not invented here, maybe. Let's just say the hipster part in you just says, I want to do it myself. I want to build it from scratch. Obviously it's not for you then, but yeah, that's just maybe a funny question. So thank you for your time.